Alright, hey guys, welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to do the first half of the UFO Abduction Script. What we're going to focus on with this first half is really just a matter of getting the UFO movement done, where you can lift it, lower it, move it left, right, forward, back. We're just going to work on that much, and we're going to work on the second half in a different tutorial where we can actually abduct barrels and things like that. But let's go ahead and play real fast. Basically how the controls work, obviously what we do, we eliminate the HUD and everything, the player doesn't spawn, or at least he's hidden at least. But basically if you hold down space, the spaceship is going to go up, and it can go up infinitely, there's no real bound to it. And then if you hold down control, it'll lower again. It does go through the meshes just because it's interpolating, but we don't really need to really worry about that for now. But we also have, if we hold down A, it moves to the left, W is forward, D is to the right, S is backwards. And then from there, if you left click, it will actually, activate, the tracking beam and everything like that. But that's not something we're going to worry about in this first half. We're just going to worry about the actual movement here, being able to go up and down everything. We're also going to do a little initial level setup, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and just start from scratch. So I'm just going to bring in a saved version of the level, just where it's a blank map essentially. What we're going to do first, obviously, like we do with every tutorial, we're going to go to View, World Properties, just change this game type to UT game. Just so when we spawn, we get the HUD and things like that, and we have the ability to use Kismet properly, things of that nature. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our static mesh all set up. So let's go into Content Browser. I use just a normal crate per usual. So let's just grab this crate here. I don't think I changed the size, so that doesn't really matter. We're going to leave it on its default size. And what else we got to need here is we're going to set up a camera actor that attaches to this crate and follows it. We're going to give it basically a custom camera. So let's go ahead and set that up. Let's go back into our Content Browser. Actor classes, let's just go to Camera actor, just toss that guy in there. And what we're going to do, we're going to hit this eye up here. When you click on that, whatever object you click on next, essentially you take control of. Right now I'm taking control of my camera. So if I unclick this and move backwards, there's my camera where I just was. So let's do that again. And we're just going to set this to where we want it kind of positioned. Like that's good enough. So we're going to go ahead and zoom back. Just click on it, and now we have the camera set up. What else we're going to need? We're going to go ahead and set up a couple things just preemptively. The first thing we're going to have set up here, we're going to need a dynamic trigger volume just for touch events. So let's grab our object, left click on our builder brush, it'll kind of snap into it. And if we hit Control B with that crate selected, we go back to the content browser, and it lets us know what its size is. Let's go ahead and do that. So basically, it looks like it's kind of hard to tell. Let's double click on it. So basically, approximate size: 136, 145, 143. So we're gonna put that to the side. Let's right click on the builder brush to get this menu. We're basically going to match its size. So I believe the first one was 136 in X. Then we're going to do 145 and then 143. When you do that, it does its best to really match the shape and bounds of the box. But let's go ahead and move it up. And we're just going to expand it just by a little bit. We're going to do it by a snap of 16. So if you go to geometry mode, and then select a face, you can just pull it up by 16, just so its collisions are a little better, not as tight as close to like the mesh as we really want it to be. We want it to give it a little bit of leeway. So now that we got that set up, there's our builder brush. We're going to do volumes, and then we're going to go ahead and do a dynamic trigger volume, just so it can move with the actual mesh. But what else we got to need to do with the static mesh? We're going to have to make it an interactor just because we have to animate it. So let's right click on it, convert convert to mover. Let's try to give it collision. Doesn't really matter at this point. But we're going to move from collision, collide, no collision, just to block off for right now. And then that's the only thing we really need to change right now with this. And this is what we're going to keep it simple. We don't need to add, the light or anything or the tractor beam just yet. That's going to be in the next tutorial. This is all we need for right now. So let's go ahead and open up Kismet, and we're going to start scripting this bad boy. So in the Kismet window, we're going to need a couple of variables. We're going to need a variable for our camera, so let's select that camera. Do a new object var using camera actor 0, and let's just name this camera. We're also going to need an object variable to reference the crate itself. So let's right click on that. New object using interactor 0. We're just going to name this UFO. And let's go ahead and make a reference to our dynamic trigger volume. So with that selected, let's right click in Kismet and do new object var using dynamic trigger volume 0. Alright, and let's name this UFO underscore trigger volume. So now we have a reference to everything we really need at this point. So what we want to go ahead and do is fully expand Kismet. Basically, we want the whole event to start whenever the players spawned. So let's right click, new event. I believe it's under player, and then player spawned. And obviously the player is not going to really die, so we don't really need to set this to 0, but I'm going to do it just in case. And then from there, that's the only thing we really need to change. But for spawn point, let's go ahead and select our spawn point that automatically comes in, just in case. And we're going to reference it here in spawn point. So with the actual spawn point in the scene selected, let's right click on spawn point, new object var using player start 0, and we got it hooked up. So what we need to do now is we're going to set up the camera. So in order to do that, we're going to right click, new action, I believe it's under camera, and then do set camera target. So we're basically setting the camera's target. So for the target, we're going to make it player 0. So if you hold down the P key, left click on target, you get all players. And then all players, uncheck that just so it's player 0. And the actual cam target, it's going to be our camera actor. But let's make a named variable for it. Let's go new variable, name variable. Under expected type, let's go ahead and do object. And then we just name this camera. Plug that right in. And then what we're going to do is attach this camera to the actual UFO crate. So let's do that next. Let's go to new action, actor, attach to actor. So our target is going to be the UFO. So the crate. Let's copy and paste this name variable, change its name to UFO. Set that up as the target, and what we are attaching is the camera. So let's set that up. So now if we spawn, we're going to see basically by the view of the camera that we set up earlier. So let's go ahead and play. And there we go. But one thing we have an issue with is, hey, there's our player. He's like, blah, blah, blah. And we also have the GUI and everything. So to eliminate that, we're going to need to turn on cinematic mode. In order to do that, let's right click, new action, toggle cinematic mode. We're going to put into enable. And if you look into cinematic mode, you can touch a couple things. So basically, disable movement is not actually moving forward or anything like that. It's actually turning the camera. Whereas disable turning is movement. That's what I found. It's very weird. It might have a weird build of UDK, but that's how it works. You have the ability to hide the player, disable normal input, hide the HUD, hide dead bodies, hide drop pickups, things of that nature. We want to turn all those on. We don't want any of those when we start playing. And our target is going to be the player. So let's go ahead and set that up. So now if we play, we have nothing basically. Clean HUD, no player, no input, can't do much. So we got that set up. We're almost ready to basically start animating this crate. Just before we do, we're going to go ahead and attach the dynamic trigger volume to this guy. So let's go to new action, actor, attach to actor again. The attachment, it's going to be the UFO trigger volume. So let's grab a named variable, UFO underscore trigger volume. Put that under attachment. And target, again, it's going to be UFO, so let's just copy and paste that. Put that as target. And now, basically, we're almost ready to start animating. The last thing I want to do really is put a quick console command for show volumes, just so we can see volumes as soon as we play. So let's go to new action. I believe it's under MISC and then console command. Now with the console command selected, let's go under commands. Just type in show and then space volumes. And then for target, let's do player 0. So now if we spawn, we'll see volumes. So there's our trigger volume, there's our light mass importance volume, and basically we're set. The reason why we're going to do show volumes is just to make sure that our dynamic trigger volume does attach to the actual UFO when we start animating it. So with that, let's go ahead and start animating this bad boy. So the first thing we're going to do, we'll go ahead and first start out with the hitting space to lift, and then left control to come back down. So let's go ahead and get that started. Do a new event. It's going to be input, key button pressed. And what key? We're going to go under input names. The name of the spacebar is actually just spacebar. Both the S and the B for spacebar are capitalized in those spaces. And we can test that out by going to new action, toggle, not toggle, but voice announcements, play announcement, and just hit, spacebar. So if we press it, spacebar should show up, but it's not going to show up unless we go back to our cinematic mode and uncheck hide HUD. So let's try now. And we see it come up on screen, spacebar. Press it again, spacebar comes up. So we know it's firing. So we're going to leave hide HUD unchecked for a little bit just for troubleshooting purposes. But we know the spacebar event is firing. And by default, the max trigger count is set to 0. But we also want to do an RE trigger delay. We're going to change that from 0.01 to directly to 0. And that's just for when we release spacebar, because that doesn't fire unless the trigger delay is set to 0 seconds. So we got the event all set up. So now all we need to really do is animate this guy. So with the crate selected, let's hold down the M key, left click to create a new Matinee. And in this Matinee, we're going to double click that. And this could be very strange what we're going to set up, but it makes a lot of sense when we get it going. So making sure your crate selected, let's right click, add new empty group. We're going to call this UFO _movement upward vertical, just to name it properly. We're going to right click on that, add new movement track. And we're going to set the time to 0.1 seconds. So let's go ahead and move this track all the way to 0.1 second. Obviously, first keyframe is going to be at 0 seconds. Second keyframe is going to be at 0.1 second. And we're basically going to lift it up. We're going to lift it up by maybe 4 units. So 4 units. So now we know it's moving. We're just putting this on loop. It's basically shaking. But that's normal. What we're going to go ahead and do in the Matinee properties, we're going to do rewind on play and no reset on rewind. So basically every time this animation plays, it's going to rewind the animation too. But basically that's what the rewind on play means. And then when we do no reset on rewind, it means it doesn't reset its initial position. So basically what's going to happen, as long as we're pressing the space bar, it's going to lift up 4 units, then another 4 units, another 4 units, another 4 units until we let go. From there it's going to stop. But we also want to go ahead and change the play rate just to ×3 just to make it really smooth transition. So now how we hook it up, we go ahead and put pressed into play. And the same thing goes for repeated if it keeps being held down. And then released is stop. And let's go ahead and disconnect interbacker _0. Replace it with UFO, that name variable, just to keep things consistent. And let's go ahead and give it a try, see if this works. So if we hold down spacebar, we're moving up. Which is perfect. So if we want to go ahead, let's change the play rate to maybe 10. Let's see if this makes it any faster. It doesn't really. So just in order to increase the speed, we're going to need to open up Matinee again. Instead of doing 0.4, why don't we lift it up by another 16 units. Now let's try again. So now it's much faster. So let's just change the play rate again to like 3. And now that's a good enough speed. So we got that set up, which is fantastic. So what we're going to do next, we're going to set up all directions at this point. So it's going to get a little confusing towards the end, but so far we got lifting working. So we're going to do the same thing, except now we're going to do it so if you want to go down. So let's just copy and paste this whole matinee and trigger for key button pressed. The first thing we're going to do is actually change the input button. So I did the left control button, so to get that working, the actual name is left and then control, one word. And then we can confirm that's working if we go ahead and do another voice announcement. So let's just do left control, plug that in. So if we hit the left control button, we got the word left control. So we know that's working. And this is going to be hooked in the same exact way. So pressed and repeated in play, and then released into stop. But now what we need to do is change the animation. So let's delete the last keyframe. And I believe we set this to 20 units upwards. So we're going to create another keyframe at the end. Go down 16. Go down 4 once. So now we can see it, it's like... So we know that's working. So let's go ahead and test it. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So we know that's working. And we also see that the trigger volume is attached properly. We see it moving with the actual UFO. So far, so good. So now it's time for the other directions. So forward, back, left, and right. So we'll go ahead and start with forward, which will be W. So it's copy and paste this whole sequence. Rename the input name. So for the W, I just do a capitalized W. And then all we need to do is go into our matinee, delete the last keyframe, make a new one, move 4 units forward, and then another 16 units since we're doing 20. And then we loop that, and we see it doing almost identically the same thing. But let's go ahead and make sure it's working. So if we hit W, we're moving forward, space, forward, control, it's forward. But we're actually going to change some things towards the end, because if you hold down, W and space, sometimes you get weird things happening. It really occurs more with the actual letter key, so WASD. I'll show you more once we get those in. So let's go ahead. We've got 3 more directions to go. So key button pressed, we're going to do backwards. So we're going to do S, go back into our matinee, delete the last keyframe, remake a new one, 16 units back, and then another 4. Just loop it to make sure it looks like it's doing what it needs to do. Perfect. And then let's go ahead and test that, see if we can move backwards. And we can. Which is perfect. So far, so good. So all we need to do now is left and right. So let's copy and paste this. We'll do left first, so that's going to be the A key. So put in A and the new one, and then double click on the new matinee. Delete the last keyframe. Make a new one by hitting enter. Move 4 units to the left, and then another 16. Let's just make sure it's moving. Perfect. And before we test that, let's go ahead and do the right motion. So in the event, change A to D in our matinee. Delete the last keyframe. Make a new one. 16 units to the right, and then another 4. Loop that. And it looks like it's working. So now let's go ahead, play in the editor. Got up working, down working, forward, back, left, and then right. But now let me show you this. If you hold down W and A at the same time almost, sometimes you get issues where it starts skipping a little bit. It doesn't seem like I can recreate. You kind of see it happen in some instances where it kind of jitters. It's not really apparent here, which is good, but we're going to go ahead and just play it safe, and we're going to create it how I did on my end when it was jittery. What we're going to do, it's going to get a little messy, so it may be a little difficult to really see what's going on. But we're going to separate these. So the up and down vertically, they're right here, and then these are the forward, backwards, left, and right over here. What we're going to do, we're going to get a toggle node, and we're going to basically, whenever you press spacebar or any of the keys, what it's going to do is going to temporarily turn off the ability to use the other keys, just so people can't press multiple buttons at once and kind of confuse the animation. So let's go to new action, toggle, and then just toggle. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out with the the spacebar when you lift up. Whenever this is pressed and repeated, we're going to turn off every other key input event, but when we let go with the released, we're going to turn them back on. So this is where it's going to get a little confusing. It's going to get kind of messy, but we got to attach this event node to all of the other ones. So there's going to be 5 in total coming out. So let's start with that one, and then we're going to move over here, and down here, down here, and then down here. And we need to do this with every single one. So let's copy and paste. Hold down Alt left click if you get that dot right there. Disconnect all the event nodes, reconnect it with this new one. Pressed and released, go to turn off. Pressed and repeated, go to turn off. Released goes to turn on. And again, it's going to be all these events. One up here, one here, one here, one here, and then one at the very bottom here. So we're going to keep doing that. Disconnect them all, start over. Pressed and repeated, go to turn off. Released goes to turn on. And you basically do it to all the events that it's basically like every single event except for the one it's attached with. So each one should have a total of 4 turn off events connected to it. Okay. So 3 more to go. Disconnect them. Pressed and repeated goes to turn off. Released to turn on. And then every other event. All right. 2 more to go. All right. Connect this to all the events, except for the one it's connected with. Okay. Gets a little confusing, but if you just take your time, you're not going to get messed up. All right, 1 more to go. So pressed and repeated, go to turn off. Released, it gets to turn on. And then every other event gets attached to it. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, oops. Boom, and then right there, and then last one. There we go. So it's a little messy, but what we're going to do here, hold down Control Alt left click drag, make a marquee selection around this whole thing, around all the movement. Let's go ahead and hit C to comment. We'll call this UFO movement. Then we're going to select these all again, but then we're going to right click, create new sequence. And when you name these, you can't have a space or any special characters. So I'm just going to call this UFO movement, or UFO underscore movement. And it's going to create this little block. And then when you double click on this little block, there's our whole thing. It's all by itself, kind of isolated. So let's go ahead, double check to make sure everything's working. And everything is. So we got the movement working, which is awesome. So we can lift, go down, left, right, everywhere, every direction you want to go except for like diagonals, so we don't have to worry about that. So with that, let's go ahead and turn off hide HUD again. Just activated it actually, so we don't have a HUD. Just when we come back in, that looks clean. And that'll be it for this first part. I'm probably going to do the second part tomorrow, where we actually go over how to abduct barrels, everything like that. There's a lot of settings we need to make sure these barrels have, and things like that. It doesn't get confusing, but it's a lot of logic going on at this point, and we'll save that for the next one. I'm going to go ahead and build lighting here. But that will end it for this first part tutorial. Hope you learned a lot. Hope what you found was interesting. If this is something you didn't know before, but the next part's going to be way more complicated, and it's going to be more interesting to learn. So keep an eye out for that one, guys. All right, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe, or at least comment with more suggestions, things you want to see, or like the video, or share it. Do whatever you like. But that'll be it. I'll see you guys next time.